supported by an Indian landlord. It's also attacked by Muslim families on Protestant housing estates in Portugal, very next to the country. Other stories today, nail binding on the neck, rain, they seem great to get it to the farmers are frustrated too.
The ancient stone circle of Stonehenge, last summer the scene of violent confrontations. Rows of barbed wire and hundreds of police prevented nomadic hippies from holding their annual free festival. Caught up in the battle were the Druids, unable to perform their ancient religious ceremony at the summer solstice. This year we spent the week before Midsummer's Day with the Secular Order of Druids. We filmed them as they tried to win back their religious freedoms in the courts and struggled to resolve the conflict between the hippies and the police. This is what's happened.
We're not out for battles. We're not out for confrontation. And what we've done all year, all of the past 12 months in these negotiations that we've held endlessly until the English Heritage and the National Trust unilaterally and without any notice whatsoever broke them off. What we've been doing is looking for a peaceful, sensible solution. And that peaceful, sensible political solution is something that must happen eventually.
The press arrived in Salisbury to witness a piece of street theatre. Hippies and police performing to an audience of Saturday shoppers. The occasion was a public protest by hundreds of hippies who wanted a site for Stonehenge 86, their free festival which for 12 years has been set up around the Druid ceremonies at the summer solstice.
Since the confrontation at Stonehenge last year, the authorities, and that's the the English Heritage, the National Trust, District Council and the County Council, and indeed the government as well, have had a whole 12 months to find a solution to this problem. And what they've effectively done is bury their heads in the sand in hope that it would go away. And it hasn't, because we have this demonstration here today.
I just don't want to get to a situation as a publicly elected representative that people, general citizens, ratepayers, start to lose faith in their police force. And if it goes on for 4 or 5 years, I do fear that that could be a situation. And it would make your job, your position quite invidious, and that a lot of your...
There seems to be a complete lack of understanding about what Stonehenge means spiritually to some of the people who go there, to the vast majority of the people who go there. To them, it is a sacred site. I have thought in my own mind what would happen if, because of crowds and because of the numbers of people wanting to come to Salisbury Cathedral at Easter, the authorities suddenly said one year, you may not come to Salisbury Cathedral at Easter because you will cause too much trouble, there will be chaos, there will be too many people trying to arrive, so you may not come. The outcry from Christians in this country would be enormous. People will not stand for being told that you cannot worship where you wish to worship. This is a free country.
We're here this year, we're going to be here next year, we're going to be here the year after, we're going to be here when Maggie Thatcher has retired to Dulwich.
The Secular Order of Druids were formed to act as a bridge between the Druids and the festival people, and also between the Druids and the authorities involved in this thing. And in some respects we act as mediators between the various elements. So I suppose we had 3 tasks to fulfill this week. The first one was to see if we could yet again find a festival site and therefore solve the problem overnight, given we couldn't do that. Our other task was to go to the High Court to appeal for the Druidic ceremony to take place. Hopefully to win, and that would have, we felt, solved some of the elements, although it doesn't obviously solve the festival element. And thirdly, really to perform our Druidic marriage at Stonehenge, hopefully at the Solstice.
Henge 86.
It's taken an 1847 Act of Parliament for the police to stop the convoy heading for Stonehenge. It entitles them to prescribe a route, and after hours on the ring road, they herded them off, away from the stones.
A guy wanted to go on to Stonehenge.
Yeah.
We all want to go to Stonehenge, but we're also aware that they're not going to let us. Therefore, we move together, I presume, to Wilton. We can sit down and think about it. That's how I see it.
Certainly so.
The stopping of the festival last year was attributed to the damage done by the festival to the archaeological site.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of that?
It's a flimsy excuse. It's the flimsiest excuse I ever heard. Somebody last year, or the year last, dug into a barrow, which is very unfortunate. But that barrow had already been excavated by archaeologists and all its stuff removed. Meanwhile, all over the plain, the army runs riot over ancient earthworks, destroying them every day. Farmers plough them down. Archaeologists themselves have destroyed huge areas of our ancient past by their excavations. What the festival did was as nothing compared to what's done officially and with approval.
"13 miles away from Stonehenge, the police soon discovered a small advance party who had set up camp overnight. It was a tactic to establish a site for their festival.
Could I ask you to move back down, please?
Our crew waited and watched as reinforcements arrived to surround the camp. After they'd been negotiating for an hour, our camera was allowed up the hill to join the camp.
This is always the worst.
Is that sugar up there?
No.
Middle, yeah. That way, yeah, he pointed out.
In the early light, the debate continued. Were they on public or private Ministry of Defence land? Could the police justify moving them on?
What land is what? Jesus followed us last night.
Hello, we've got the cows coming. They're coming home.
Getting them together.
No schedule signs, are there? Say that there's.
We were just a family up here for a picnic.
I've seen normal public up here for years and years and years. They never get checked off by Ministry of Defence police.
This is a picnic.
There's no.
Family.
No signs.
Breakfast in America.
There's no schedule one sign now.
There's no schedule sign here. There's nothing to No. There are no schedule 1, 2, 3 or 3 signs anywhere around here. We've been around the whole border.
There just need to be schedule signs.
We're not harassing you, we're just pointing out to you that you're on MOD land and the public could pass it.
Well, so this is another ancient monument to which we're being denied our right then.
Is it?
It's not.
You tell us. You know.
The army never built this. We built this. The people of Wessex built this. And this is where we should be allowed to come.
The problem we face as spiritual groups is that, one, the media don't really seem to want to know too much about what they may call esoteric subjects or mysticism, and therefore tend to paint us as eccentrics or spiritual, religious fanatics even. And yet the truth is that we're from all backgrounds.
you are trespassing on MOD land.
Right, so are you giving us
We'll
notice?
now give you formal notice that you're trespassing on MOD land.
Right.
If you do not move, you're
You
liable
will
to
arrest
arrest.
us.
You are liable to arrest. Okay? So you have a formal warning at 7:22.
Has anyone got a place?
Well, it's all up to you, lot. What do you want to do? It's entirely up to you if we can go down. Generally young, unemployed people often come out from the inner cities for release, if anything, at the time of summer. There are an enormous amount of them that express a strong spiritual attachment to Stonehenge, even if they can't actually articulate what that attachment is, that they are very aware of it.
One of the difficulties about having a minority that represents all the things that the majority has forgotten about is that it becomes a scapegoat and it collects all the illnesses which are carried in the shadow of that majority. So all the things that are put onto them, they do in fact show. They show the sickness, and very often they show the drug taking, they show the chaos, the raggedness, the unkemptness, and that really is a symptom of our society that we've disowned and put onto a section of it. Now, I'm not going to pretend that these people are always exemplary, and I'm not going to pretend that there's any point in assigning blame in different directions, but I think the phenomenon I'm looking at is where we disown some part of ourselves through being obsessed with some kind of political way through, or some unconsciousness which I think we are very often caught in, and the balance of nature comes up in some small body of people that represent all the things that have been disowned, the hidden treasure, but they also carry the sickness of being alienated.
By the middle of the week, the main festival site had attracted over 500 people. But soon the injunction notices were up. They would have to move by Friday afternoon. They couldn't hold their festival here and still had nowhere else to go.
There's something about Stonehenge, isn't there, which does draw people. And of course the present conflict of interests makes it very plain, and the passions which are brought to it. Now, it's not just any old monument, it's something which people feel very, very deeply about without quite knowing why. You know, there it is stuck up on Salisbury Plain, and yet tourists flock there by thousands, visitors flock there by thousands and so on. It's always been attractive.
As far as we know, that was a religious site. And you can take it back to the time of the Neolithic peoples and the Druidic culture which came after it. And then you find that all these become assimilated in later religions. You have the old gods of England that represented the Anglo-Saxon, the Teutonic gods. You had the early Christians, and then the later Christians, and I think each one took over a good deal from what was there before.
Originally in private hands, Stonehenge was given to the nation by Cecil Chubb in 1918.
Mr. Chubb, when he gave Stonehenge to the nation, laid it down that no buildings or obstructions or any additions to the landscape were to be made within 500 yards of Stonehenge. Of course, that's been completely flouted by the authorities, by their erection of wire fences, their digging of tunnels, tarmacking the whole area for car parking, putting up lavatories, shops and so on. I mean, it's been as if Mr. Chubb had never put these things, they've been entirely ignored.
Now the responsibilities are split. The National Trust owns the land around the stones, but English Heritage looks after Stonehenge. This year, English Heritage refused the Druids permission for their ancient religious ceremony.
Why wasn't this all sorted out over the course of the last 12 months? I mean, surely you knew the problem wouldn't go away.
We did indeed, and that's why we initiated the discussions following the summer solstice last year. In the course of those discussions, it was made clear to us over and over again that most of the people who wanted to come to Stonehenge wanted a festival. And we were told quite categorically that if no site could be found on which a large number of people could stay and hold a festival, it wouldn't be possible to arrange and organise an orderly solstice ceremony. That's the reason why it's not going to be possible to hold such ceremonies this year.
The International Council for Civil Liberties has helped the Druids take their case through the courts. They argue that it's against the laws of natural justice to ban a religious ceremony, and that it flouts Article 9 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which guarantees religious freedom. 36 hours before Midsummer Dawn, the Court of Appeal gave its judgment. The Druids had lost.
Yes, it was a very great disappointment today. The natural justice that we were so expecting didn't materialise.
Somebody has got to look at this whole thing. You simply cannot ban a religious ceremony just because a lot of hippies come to watch.
Obviously, for the second year running, we are dispossessed from our temple. And we will obviously be holding our rituals. But they will have to be elsewhere. We won't obviously break the judgment of the High Court.
English Heritage gave us the impression the court case was a red herring and that they could close the monument anyway.
Oh, they can. This is what the fuss is all about. The fact is that English Heritage shouldn't have the powers to ban a religious ceremony. You can't have a group of kindly old men sitting in Fortress House in Savile Row deciding who can practice their religion and who can't. It's completely absurd.
That night, the hippies held a concert, the nearest they got to a free festival.
That way? Is there? That's all right then.
In the eye of the storm, Gail and Mohawk are tending their lettuces. More than most, they're nervous about tomorrow. They've waited for over a year to be married in a Druid ceremony at Stonehenge.
Doesn't mean anything to me, registry office, church. I mean, it's something we've grown up with, but I mean, it's not part of, anything that I do or stand for, it doesn't connect. So it'd be like, I don't know, going to Mars and living, you know, is to go into a church or a registry office. My God doesn't live there.
To come out and walk out about here at night, just have a walk around and see how everything's doing. It's a really nice feeling. See, it's actually ours, sort of thing.
It was just almost a festival vibe anyway, you know. Just watching it from day to day. I'd like to be able to attend a Solstice festival at Stonehenge. See, it must happen, you know. There's just so much grief. When people start to realise how much money's coming out of their pockets to stop it, maybe that'll boost people along a little bit.
By the way, when you do a peace sign, right, do it like that, not like that, all right?
Meanwhile, the deadline at Hanging Langford passed and the convoy were moved on. In an operation that has cost the Wiltshire Police alone nearly £500,000 in 1 week, the authorities made sure the hippies were dispersed.
Stop my stuff! Follow my stuff!
Why don't you go away? Why don't you just go away?
There were no injuries, but some arrests the police didn't want on television.
It's a pity it had to end how it did, but then I suppose if we won't act like sheep, then they won't let us graze in their field. Our friend, who is just 16, walked up to a policeman to ask him what was happening and was promptly arrested and charged with assault on a police officer, obstruction and obstructing the highway. Whilst in the police compound, another friend's van had its lights and wings smashed in. Vegetarian people in the cells were given sausages for breakfast at the police station.
Universal majesty, verity, and love infinite. All reverence to the Holy One, the world enlightener. All reverence to the Holy, the pure.
Sun machine is coming down, and we're gonna have a party. Sun machine is coming down, and we're gonna have a party. Sun machine is coming down, and we're gonna have a party. Come on, sing it out. Sun machine is coming down, and we're gonna have a party.
We have asked David Penny, the Reverend David Penny, to say a prayer on our behalf for peace in the future and for the hopeful recovery of the Bishop of Salisbury.
So this prayer reflects the oneness that we share together. Lord of life, creator of the cosmos, liberate us from the false gods of privilege and power, materialism and monetarism.
In the terms of was it a successful celebration of the solstice, then quite clearly it wasn't. It can't be regarded as such. A Druidic ceremony on the tarmac outside Stonehenge with helicopters buzzing overhead doesn't really have the aura that Druidism likes to create around its ceremonies. Now clasp both hands together. With this tujan, I bind you together in wedlock in the name of the great God and Goddess, Brother Mohawk and Sister Gale. The origin of our order into which you are being initiated is of the most remote antiquity, being far more ancient than that of the Persian Magi, the Brahmins of India, and the Chaldeans, or the Assyrians. Its character is social, benevolent, patriotic, and fraternal. And the information I'm about to give you, as well as the principles I wish to inculcate, will, I trust, command your most marked and serious attention.